Gifts come in many packages. Strange as it sounds, my greatest gifts were packaged as a storyteller, the stories he told, and the journey where those stories led me. The storyteller was my father. The stories his true life experience as a prisoner of war in Nazi-occupied Germany during World War II. Barely surviving in 5 different concentration camps, he knew what it was to be demoralized and brutalized, purified and sanctified. His amazing memoirs were secretly chronicled in a tiny pocket address book, written in a shorthand he devised. He kept this diary hidden. He wrote of the horrors of war and of the twisted minds of demented men who thought nothing of stripping others of their health, their dignity, or their sanity. They tried to strip a man of everything that he was. One thing they could not take from my father was his faith. In fact, his faith in the provisional God he knew as a father and the consistency of Jesus, who became his closest friend, was sealed by an outpouring of the Holy Spirit. His faith was that of an innocent child, the kind we are all called to live, never assuming just a sweet trust. His desire to live the gospel under such deplorable conditions made my heart hunger for this Jesus too. Our Lord, who had suffered for my father and with my father, would allow my father the privilege of unifying his pain with the most precious pain of his crucifixion. Beyond this, he would bless him with 3 miracles, besides the most obvious miracle, survival. His constant grace was my father's hope. My little heart was certainly fertile ground to plant seeds of faith. Sitting on the arm of the living room chair in my Chanel bathrobe on Saturday nights, the sowing began. I would open every fiber of my being to receive every word and nuance my father offered. I hungered for his precious eye contact, to reassure him that I was willing to travel with him in frigid below-zero weather through the trenches and foxholes of the frozen wasteland that had become Nazi Germany. I escorted him into the boxcars where men were reduced to human skeletons and would mess their pants out of sheer fear of traveling into the unknown. I was wrapped in awe and wonder at the thought that daily this wounded soldier was turning to Jesus for every ounce of strength for dealing with the silence of starvation, the stench of death, the daily monotony of confinement, incarceration, and the damaging effects of an endless sameness, constant abuse which spurred the need for constant prayer. His prayer had become as important as his food, generally just as 1 small cup of rutabaga soup and 1 slice of black bread daily, a perpetual fast, an opportunity to grow closer to Christ through sacrifice, and ultimately to love others more because of it. The journey that you are about to enter into is painful indeed. May I suggest using it as I did? Hunger even greater for a wondrous Lord who would allow one of his own to walk the darkness of Calvary, but would resurrect him to life and acceptance and forgiveness. For you see, as a child, I never heard my father utter an unkind word to anyone or about anyone, including the tyrannical soldiers who directly inflicted pain. My father accepted forgiveness and gave forgiveness for all the ill feelings and behaviors that are forced upon men during war. He frequented confession and the reception of the Holy Eucharist as often as possible to help him cope with what had become his life. The entry chronicling his birthday is among the most touching. Never more physically and mentally desperate, the little Belgian priest celebrates Mass for him in his billet, and the Eucharist, the most magnificent gift, is given to this nearly broken soldier. Food for obedience. Sandra, he would say years later, those young German boys were just doing what they were told to do too. Christ in time would wash away all his confusion, anger, and pain. He would return home an even better man. All acts of obedience lived to the fullest. Obedience needed to survive. When he was divinely directed to relinquish his boots in sub-zero weather for a trade of a loaf of black bread, we understand the bread of life is always sustaining. Too humble to fully understand all the divine protection given him, until on a bleak and monumental forced march, Jesus appears and speaks to yet suffer more. I offer you, my brothers and sisters, the 2 greatest gifts I received from my Father after life itself. First, the seeds of faith he sowed in me, to want to know, love, and live for Jesus Christ. And secondly, my Father's diary.
Beaten but not broken, The Diary of a U.S. POW Surviving 5 Nazi Concentration Camps. A true story from World War II by Tech Sergeant Louis William Toury, Jr.
November 30th, 1944. I awoke early for some unknown reason, wrote my darling wife Margaret a V-mail letter. After a bit of daydreaming of home, I went down to early breakfast in the mess hall. Had oatmeal and pancakes and a hot cup of tea. First Sergeant Moore told us after breakfast to go and say goodbye to all of our British friends. He stated very soon that we would be pulling out for places unknown. I put on my light field pack and was headed toward 59 Cromwell Road to say goodbye to the Creed family, Mother Creed, Molly and Betty, and Molly's 2 children. They had already heard that this was our last day in Banbury, Oxon. They were crying, and Molly Creed gave me a fine Chinese idol made of ivory. It was a good luck piece. We loaded up our gear in the late evening and headed for the train station. The whole town came out for our departure, and tears were in everyone's eyes. Slowly, everyone in the outfit boarded the train, and then the train slowly pulled away, headed south somewhere. Goodbye 59 Cromwell Road and Banbury, Oxon. Said my prayers on the train, and then fell asleep. December 4th. Slowly coming across the channel, and you can see the outline of the European continent. The water is really rough, and there are plenty of seasick soldiers. We are told that the waters around us are heavily mined. Everyone is plenty worried and seasick, including me. I borrow some field glasses from Sergeant Sutton so that I can see the coastline more clearly. The captain states over the loudspeaker that we are off the coast of France. Can't see too much of anything, so I give the glasses back to Sergeant Sutton. The priest on the ship holds Mass on the top deck, and I attend and receive communion aboard the Manoawi. I talked to the priest for a while, and then we had a fire drill on board the ship. Then the rain came. It rained and rained as the ship plowed toward the shore. The sea is real rough, and waves are high. I go down below and rest some, and then started to clean my rifle and talk to Sergeant Sutton, Sergeant LaFontaine, Sergeant Moore, Sergeant Troy, and Sergeant Simpula. Squirm into my hammock for the night and say my prayers. It's really raining outside the portal. December 5th. Another day arrives, and we are still on board the ship, rain still coming down. I attended early Mass on board the top deck. We all have orders to keep our M1 and gear cleaned at all times. I know my gun like the captain knows his ship. The boat is slowly coming toward shore. On board are the men in my outfit, the 106th, mostly the 1st and 2nd Battalions. As we headed toward the shore, we passed burning ships in the harbor, some submerged, a tangle of metal, some blown to pieces. There is destruction of all kinds around us. Smoke pouring from many ships in the harbor. Jerry must have paid a visit to this area lately and dropped plenty of bombs. Outside the harbor, twisted equipment like pretzels. It looked like a giant had gone on a rampage. In my mind, I had a glimpse of things to come and things to expect. Water is so rough that we just drop anchor off the mouth of this port. It's so rough that I have a hard time falling asleep, but with a worried mind, I finally doze off. Prayers on my lips. December 13th. This morning we are issued extra ammo. I got a .45 automatic pistol, also handed an automatic grease gun, both in addition to my M1 gun. Got back to the house and cleaned my weapons, and talked to Attila and her family. We talked about the good USA and home. Heard artillery firing in the distance and some small arms firing also. We have patrols outside of town now, and we're being lectured on kill or be killed. It's the enemy or you. Study maps of the Ardennes sector in the afternoon. Squad leaders are instructed on our section that is to be patrolled and covered. Go to Mass tonight with Sergeant LaFontaine and a sergeant from Monroe, Indiana. December 15th. Wrote my wife a letter. Before I left the States, we thought up a code to let her know where I was at all times. We had a battalion problem. We were going up a steep hill on this cold morning when one of our squad leaders, Mervyn Smith, fell backward and fell all the way to the bottom of the hill and broke both legs. Our first war casualty of the 106th Division. They rushed him back by jeep to our field hospital. We go on patrol again today, and I'm worried sick. Kill or be killed. That's on my mind constantly now. Hear gunfire in the distance again, and it's so cold now. Snow ass deep, and I hope it will stop snowing. Eat chow again and head toward my billet. for a good night's sleep. Prayer on my lips and thinking of home and my dearest wife and family. Still hearing artillery in the distance. Sleep. The town of Lomischweiler, Germany was ours, occupied by the 106th Division. Make latrine call at 5 a.m. this morning. Returning to my billet, all hell breaks loose. It seems the whole earth is on fire. The Germans open up with the biggest bombardment this morning at 5:30. Artillery, 88s, screaming Mimis, shells falling all around us, men dying before my very eyes. Homes are blown completely apart. This is crazy. The town of Lomischweiler is on fire. War is hell. All sergeants report to our command post. Captain Cashin, our company commander, issues orders. We are to move up and take the town of Winterspelt and hold it at all costs. These are orders from Colonel Reed of the 424th Regiment. Grab our combat packs and M1 rifles and some ammo, and load up in trucks and head into combat. On our way up, the Germans again start shelling our position. Direct hit on one of our trucks. Some of my comrades die and receive Purple Hearts that day. Schultz, Bender, Goodwin, Alanya, and some others. We unload outside of Winterspelt. I'm then handed a grease gun and a .45 pistol. I write a few lines on a piece of paper and hand it to the truck driver. It was to my dearest wife, Margie. We move up and secure the town, and then I deployed the 3rd platoon on a high ridge outside of town. We all dig our foxholes through 2 feet of snow. It's still snowing and very foggy as all hell, and it's so damn cold. Put out a few men as outpost, sniper fire. But late this afternoon, the Germans let loose again. Screaming Mimis, artillery. Some of my buddies are hit and dying and falling, and the white snow is turning red. What a sight. My God, why this? I cuddle up in my foxhole and await my enemy. It's so cold. Have mercy on me, dear Lord. Forgive me for what I have to do very soon. Kill or be killed. This night we await the Germans, for in the distance we hear their tanks and infantry on the move toward our positions. God have mercy on me. December 19th. This morning the snow is falling hard, and the few left alive decide to crawl back to town. My God, there are only 11 of us alive. Once in town, we enter a burnt-out house and go down into the cellar. We know we are cut off completely by the enemy and discuss our bad situation, holed up like rats. Sergeant Troy, Sergeant Kampula, and I try to figure a way to work our way through the German lines and get to St. Vith. As we look through the cellar window, we see their Tiger tank coming into Winterspelt, with a platoon of German infantry following. No ammo, no food, cold as hell. Hurting all the while, our days are numbered now. Once in town, the tank approaches the next house, and a German soldier shouts into the house in English that if there are any Americans inside, come out or be blown apart. This procedure continues from house to house. In one house, Sergeant Roan and his men come out with no guns or anything to defend themselves. They are immediately cut down in cold blood before our very eyes. This was to be our fate also. I can't believe that men could do this to one another. My God. My God. We destroy the firing pins on our M1s because we have no ammo for them. No food, no help, and no way to defend ourselves. Now the tank approaches our house. The order is given in English by a German soldier dressed in an American uniform. American swine, if any is in this house, come out or be blown to pieces. The Germans noticed movement and surrounded the house. They ordered us out, and I thought any minute bullets would be entering my body. But Lord, you intervened again. We were being dragged and marched to a German command post. The soldiers in the command post were all dressed as American infantrymen, put into a room and interrogated by a German officer. We told them we were hungry, but it did no good. Questions and more questions. There are about 30 men in the room. Some are really shot up. We all lay down in a bunch and fall asleep. God forgive me for what I had to do these days of fighting the enemy.